Right, so let's dive into Aptos. You've been hearing the buzz, right?
Yeah, definitely.
This layer 1 blockchain is making waves, especially with those token unlocks on the horizon. So is Aptos the real deal or just hype? Let's unpack it.
Well, you know what I think is so fascinating here is that Aptos is aiming for something pretty ambitious. Mainstream adoption. They're not just building another blockchain. They're building for the everyday user, focusing on real-world applications.
Yeah, and they're not messing around when it comes to speed. Over 150,000 transactions per second. That's mind-blowing.
It is, and that's thanks to their use of parallel execution, which allows them to process transactions simultaneously, rather than one after another. Think of it like having multiple checkout lanes at a grocery store instead of just one. Things move a lot faster.
Okay, so that explains the how. But what's the why? Why is that speed so important for their goals?
Okay, so imagine a world where you can use crypto for everyday purchases, like coffee or movie tickets, even paying your rent, with lightning-fast transactions and minimal fees. That's the kind of future Aptos is building towards. And that speed makes it super attractive for developers
Mhm.
who want to build complex applications that need to handle a lot of transactions.
Gotcha. So it's not just about speed for the sake of speed. It's about unlocking a whole new level of functionality and usability for blockchain technology. Now, I know Aptos uses this special programming language called Move. What's the deal with that?
So Move was actually developed by the engineers behind Meta's Diem project, which, although it didn't ultimately launch, was designed with security and scalability in mind. And Aptos has inherited that DNA. Move is designed to be more secure and easier to use for developers, which is crucial for building a robust and reliable ecosystem.
Interesting. So there's a lineage there, even though DM itself didn't pan out. And speaking of backing, Aptos has snagged some serious investors. And Race and Horowitz, Tiger Global, even Binance Labs. These aren't your average crypto enthusiasts. They're placing big bets on Aptos' future.
Yeah, it's a huge vote of confidence. These investors are known for their deep pockets and their sharp instincts when it comes to identifying disruptive technologies. They see the potential in Aptos, and that's definitely a signal worth paying attention to.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks. Right now, APT is sitting at $13.06, up over 21% in the last 24 hours. That's a pretty wild swing,
Uh-huh.
even for the crypto world.
Yeah, it is. And that price jump is definitely turning heads. We're also seeing massive trading volume, $1.65 billion in the last 24 hours alone. People are definitely paying attention to Aptos.
Now, you mentioned token unlocks earlier, and I know our listeners are particularly curious about those. What's the deal with these unlocks, and why should we care?
So token unlocks are essentially scheduled releases of pre-mined tokens into circulation. In Aptos's case, we're looking at 11.31 million APT tokens, 1% of the total supply, unlocking every month for the next year, starting on December 12th.
Okay, so a steady drip of new tokens hitting the market. I can see why that might raise some eyebrows. What's the potential impact of these unlocks on the price of APT?
Well, the most likely scenario is some short-term volatility. When you increase the supply of something, especially as significantly as these unlocks are doing, it can put downward pressure on the price. So we might see some dips around those unlock dates, as some holders choose to sell.
Okay, that makes sense. So should people be freaking out about these upcoming unlocks?
Not necessarily. It's important to remember that a similar unlock happened just last month, and the market absorbed it fairly well. However, each unlock brings its own set of circumstances, and it's impossible to predict exactly how the market will react.
So it's not a guaranteed win or loss. It's more like a wait-and-see situation. What are your thoughts on the long-term implications of these unlocks?
Well, in the long run, the impact of these unlocks really hinges on Aptos delivering on its promises. If they can continue to build out a thriving ecosystem, attract more developers, and create compelling real-world use cases for their technology, then the demand for APT could very well outpace the increased supply from these unlocks. It's all about striking that balance between supply and demand.
So the token unlocks are a piece of the puzzle. But it's the bigger picture that really matters. Which brings us to our next question. What's happening in the Aptos ecosystem beyond just the token? Because it sounds like things are getting pretty interesting over there.
Well, one of the areas where Aptos is really shining is decentralized finance,
Yeah.
or DeFi. We're seeing platforms like Echo Lending, which is basically a decentralized bank where you can lend and borrow crypto, absolutely exploding in popularity.
Yeah, I'm seeing some pretty impressive numbers here. Echo lending alone boosted Aptos' total value locked, or TDL, which is basically the amount of crypto being used in DeFi protocols, by over 21% in just the last week. That's a serious influx of capital.
It is, and that kind of growth is a strong indicator of the health and potential of the Aptos ecosystem. It shows that people are confident in Aptos' security and capabilities, and they're willing to put their money where their mouth is.
So more activity attracts more developers, which leads to more innovation, which attracts even more users. It's like a self-reinforcing cycle. But it's not just DeFi that's buzzing on Aptos, right?
Absolutely. Another exciting development is the integration of stablecoins, like fast USD. Stablecoins, as you might know, are cryptocurrencies designed to maintain a stable value, usually pegged to a real-world asset like the US dollar.
Stable coins. They're like the bridge between the wild world of crypto and the stability of traditional finance, right?
Exactly. They bring a level of predictability that's essential for real-world adoption. Imagine trying to buy groceries with a cryptocurrency that fluctuates wildly in value every minute. Not very practical. Stablecoins solve that problem.
So by integrating stablecoins like Fast USD, Aptos is making itself more appealing for everyday use cases like payments and online shopping. And that's a big step towards their goal of mainstream adoption. But what about the fun stuff? Any cool projects or applications that are catching your eye?
Oh, you bet. Aptos is making waves in the gaming world, too. There's this AAA game called Final Glory that recently launched, and it's already attracting over 100,000 users.
Wow, that's a lot of gamers. What makes Final Glory and Aptos such a good fit?
Well, blockchain gaming is all about ownership and transparency, and Aptos' speed and low transaction fees make it a perfect platform for these types of games. Final Glory allows players to own and trade in-game assets as NFTs, and Aptos ensures that these transactions happen quickly and securely.
Okay, so it's not just about numbers going up on the charts. There's actual innovation and real-world stuff happening in the Aptos ecosystem. But let's shift gears a bit and look further down the road. What are Aptos's long-term ambitions? What's next on their roadmap?
Well, Aptos has some pretty ambitious goals for the future. They're focused on expanding their stablecoin offerings, integrating Tether and USDY, two of the biggest stablecoins in the market.
So even more options for people who want to use Aptos for everyday transactions without having to worry about crypto volatility. Smart move.
They're also planning to develop financial solutions for payments, advertising, and even loyalty programs. They want to weave Aptos into the fabric of our digital lives, not just exist as a separate crypto entity.
That's a big vision.
Yeah.
But it's going to take some serious horsepower to make that happen.
Yeah.
How are they planning to scale their infrastructure to handle all this potential growth and activity?
Well, scalability is a top priority for Aptos. They're constantly working on improving their technology to ensure it can handle future demand. They understand that if they want to achieve mainstream adoption, they need to be able to process millions, even billions of transactions per day without breaking a sweat.
It's like building a highway system for the future of Web3. It needs to be robust, reliable, and able to handle a lot of traffic. But let's be realistic. The blockchain space is a competitive one. There are other Layer 1 blockchains out there, like Sui and Sei, that are also vying for a piece of the pie. How does Aptos differentiate itself in this crowded market?
That's a great question. And it brings us back to their focus on real-world usability. You know, they're not just building for crypto enthusiasts, they're building for everyone. Their technology partnerships and even their marketing efforts are all geared toward bridging the gap between the complexity of blockchain and the everyday needs of businesses and individuals.
So less about the tech jargon and more about solving actual problems that people face in their daily lives. That's a refreshing approach in a space that can sometimes feel a bit too tech-centric.
Exactly. They're focused on making blockchain technology accessible and user-friendly so that it can be used by anyone, regardless of their technical expertise.
That's a smart strategy, especially if they want to attract a wider audience beyond the crypto diehards. But they're not shying away from the technical side either, right?
Absolutely. The Move programming language is a great example of their commitment to technical innovation. It's designed for security, scalability, and developer friendliness, all crucial elements for building a robust and sustainable ecosystem.
So we've got this fascinating mix of user-friendliness and cutting-edge tech. It's like Aptos is trying to have its cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
And from what we've seen so far, they might just be able to pull it off.
It's an exciting time to be following Aptos. They're making bold moves, attracting top talent and building a strong community.
Okay, let's take a step back and consider the bigger picture. Aptos is still a relatively young project, right?
No, yeah, they've only been around for a couple of years, so there's still a lot of uncertainty. The crypto market is constantly evolving, and it's impossible to predict the future with certainty, but that's also what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, it's like being on the frontier of a new technological revolution. There's a sense of possibility, of being on the ground floor of something that could be truly transformative.
And that's the beauty of the crypto world. It's constantly pushing boundaries, challenging assumptions, and creating new opportunities. Aptos is a prime example of that spirit of innovation and disruption.
It really does feel like we're witnessing the early days of something big. Speaking of big gloves, Aptos snagged a partnership with Google Cloud. That's got to be huge for them.
Yeah, it is. Google Cloud is providing Aptos with the infrastructure and tools they need to scale and grow. Think of it as giving developers a supercharged toolbox to build amazing applications on Aptos.
So it's about making Aptos as developer-friendly as possible.
Exactly. The easier it is to build on Aptos, the more developers they attract, which in turn leads to more innovation and a more robust ecosystem. It's a win-win situation.
That makes a ton of sense. Now, I've been seeing a lot of chatter about Aptos and real-world assets, or RWAs. I'll admit that one's a little fuzzy for me. Can you break it down?
Sure, so think of RWAs as a bridge between the physical and digital worlds. We're talking about things like real estate fine art or even commodities, things that have traditionally been difficult to trade or invest in.
Because they're not exactly easy to split up or transfer ownership of.
Precisely. But imagine if you could own a fraction of a Picasso or a piece of a Manhattan skyscraper. That's what Aptos is working towards. They're building the infrastructure to tokenize these RWAs, essentially turning them into digital assets that can be traded on the blockchain.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light. So instead of needing millions of dollars to invest in a high-value asset,
Yeah,
you could buy a token that represents a fraction of that asset.
that's the idea. It democratizes access to investments that were previously out of reach for most people. And it's not just about investment. RWAs could also revolutionize things like supply chain management, making it easier to track goods and verify their authenticity.
Wow, that's incredible. So we've got Google Cloud powering the infrastructure, RWAs opening up new investment opportunities, and a vibrant ecosystem of DeFi platforms and games. Aptos seems to be firing on all cylinders. Yeah. But every revolution has its challenges, right? What are some of the potential roadblocks or pitfalls Aptos might face?
Yeah, you're right. No project is without its risks. One of the biggest hurdles for Aptos and the crypto space in general is navigating the regulatory landscape. Governments around the world are still trying to figure out how to classify and oversee these new technologies.
So there's a chance that regulations could stifle Aptos's growth or make it difficult for them to operate.
It's a possibility, and something Aptos will need to address carefully. They'll need to work closely with regulators, be transparent in their operations, and build trust with both governments and users.
Makes sense. It's like walking a tightrope, balancing innovation with compliance.
Another challenge is competition. As we discussed earlier, there are many other Layer 1 blockchains out there, all vying for the same users and developers. Aptos will need to continually innovate and differentiate itself to stay ahead of the curve.
So it's not just about building cool tech. It's about building a community, fostering trust, and staying ahead of the competition.
Exactly. And ultimately, the success of Aptos, or any blockchain project for that matter, will depend on its ability to solve real-world problems, make people's lives better, and create value that goes beyond just the price of its token.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into Aptos. It's clear that they're aiming high and building something truly special. But as you said, only time will tell if they can achieve their ambitious goals.
That's the beauty of it all, isn't it? The crypto space is constantly evolving, full of surprises and unexpected turns. It's a thrilling ride, and Aptos is definitely a project worth keeping a close eye on.
Absolutely. So for our listeners who've been diligently following along with our deep dive into Aptos, what's the big question they should be pondering as they continue to explore this exciting project?
I think the most important question is, can Aptos truly bridge the gap between the world of crypto and the mainstream? Can they deliver on their promise of real-world usability and adoption? Only time will tell, but the journey will be fascinating to watch.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Aptos. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the world of crypto.